All right, here we go. Might as well get started and just briefly summarize some of the things happening in the state this past month, or what we need to look forward to here in the last part of April and going on to May. So I think we'll start with our COVID-2 report. And does anybody have any information they'd like to share with us? Anybody from MPHL?
This is Emily. We're still seeing COVID numbers continue to drop. We are performing sequencing on all specimens received here at NPHL. We have seen an official shift for majority going to BA2, and we are continuing to track and monitor.
That's good to know. I know one question we've gotten recently, Emily, is who should be sending in their positive rapid COVID positive tests. Of course, if it's rapid, it would have to be recollected. If they do have the viral VTM, they could send that in to us to sequence. But who would you like sending in positives?
I believe that Pete has already worked with trying to get some long-term care facilities to send in any rapid antigen positives that they may receive. Of course, we would be interested in confirming any of those rapid positives if the capability was there, if someone had the ability to do a secondary collection, just so we could get a better idea of what's currently circulating in the state, but understand the issues associated with that second collection. However, the same rules as applied to antigens before should still be taken into consideration, is that an antigen test is not your most accurate, sensitive, specific assay. Your molecular is going to be a far better option. So if you want to be absolutely certain with your results, please go molecular.
All right, and we definitely appreciate that. Okay, so I hope that this particular outbreak isn't as bad as past, but you just never know. I suspect because it is such a contagious organism that it might really fly through, but we just don't know for sure. All right. Anything, I believe, Robin, if I saw your name on anything for influenza. Who else is on from state if Robin's not on? Allison, do you know if Robin's on?
I am not 100% sure. She may or may not be. This week is like ELC cracking down, getting that grant,
Yes.
grant. So she may or may not. I know she's working from home today to try to make some good progress.
Okay. All right. Well, then I'll ask NPHL if Pete or Emily, if you can share anything about flus. One thing we do want to share with our lab partners is to always be sure that any untypable influenza, please send to NPHL. It would be a category B, but we do need to make sure that we can sequence those to keep up with the avian influenza, so predominant in the bird flu populations. We need to know if it's had any repercussions on the humans in Nebraska. So Pete or Emily, anything else to share there?
Karen, I'd be interested to know from the lab partners if anybody has seen any influenza B positive samples come through their lab. We have not seen any here. And most of the Bs that I'm aware of that were positive were from antigen tests, which are probably false positive Bs. So has anybody been seeing any PCR positive Bs out there?
Feel free to unmute and let us know. I'll watch chat too if any of
Okay,
you have
Karen.
had a category or a subtyping of B.
So we would, since it's not circulating from what I gather, any influenza B positive antigen test, if we could convince our clinics or partners out there to do a separate collection for verification, that would be really important to see if we do pick it up. But that's kind of where we're at. I could state that the AH3s are still running pretty hot in our laboratory. We're still seeing a lot of positives. Any other comments from anybody? Emily, any comment from you? We're still pretty hot with the AH3s.
That's pretty much exclusively what we've been confirming in this state is AH3s. We've seen one H1N1, and then we did receive the first molecular-based B, which we're hoping to confirm early this week. But if anyone else sees them, whether you find them via antigen or molecular assays, like Pete said, we'd be very interested in seeing those Bs. Traditionally, we see the transition from A viruses to the B viruses around this time, if not a couple weeks earlier. And since we haven't really seen them, it's a very interesting scenario, and it might just be what our new influenza seasons look like moving forward.
Yeah. But the A's seem to be hanging on longer than usual too. So who knows what we're going to deal with. Yeah, I think RSV is down. From the numbers I'm seeing, it looks like RSV has been down. So that's good.
Okay. Yeah, that is good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Brianna, did anybody see Brianna on? I confess I have not been able to look through. I know we're short today. Everybody's probably out like Allison said. Any other outbreaks GI wise that we need to know?
Karen, I'd be curious to know if we're seeing, if people are seeing an increase in cryptosporidium. I looked at our numbers that we've received in the lab, and we've had 29 positives since the first of the year. Last year at this time, we had 8 positives. So it seems to me like there's something going on with cryptosporidium. Has our sequencing shown anything, Emily, that would point to outbreaks or situations going on right now?
No, it hasn't.
It hasn't, okay. But you have noticed the numbers up this year?
Yep.
Yeah. So keep sending those in to us, your positive stools that are cryptosporidium positive. We do some molecular testing, so it's important to get those.
Okay, I agree.
Hey Karen, this is Justin. Just a quick question.
Yes.
Can you repeat that again? Last year this time we had 8, and right now we're sitting at
29. I'm talking about what we received in the public health lab.
Right. I'm wondering where they're all coming from. We've just had a handful, but nothing.
I could share that with you, Justin, if you're interested.
Yeah, I am. That'd be
Okay.
great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Justin, I think something to take into consideration is that a lot more laboratories now have molecular capabilities. I think that that's one thing that has been a result of this COVID-19 pandemic is the onboarding of new and more advanced assays that are capable of detecting much more readily and efficiently than previously used assays.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense. But I would be curious as to if it's what part of the state we're seeing maybe some of these high numbers in.
Yeah, I'll share it with you, Justin.
And yes, I agree that we do have a lot of laboratories out there that can do some sort of PCR. If it is a multiplex system, make sure that any positive you get that day, don't just put it away. Please, 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 if you're on that bench, pick it out of the lineup, get it to your send out department, or call us, and we would be more than willing to help you get that sent to NPHL. So,
And I can share that, this is Pete again, I can share that Emily and staff have worked really hard with the CDC to develop a new molecular program for cryptosporidium in the state. And I would say we're probably one of the top 2 or 3 places in the US that are really doing this cryptosporidium outbreak detection. So it's important for us to keep moving the ball in that direction. And we want to be the cryptosporidium lab in the nation. So there you go. Emily, you can smile about that because you've done a lot of work on this.
yes.
But it fits our state because of the animal exposure issues with livestock, et cetera. And we are working with a vet diagnostic lab on cryptosporidium, looking at their cases as well. So trying to correlate between humans and animals. So it's an interesting project for us.
Yes. And so if all of you out there in the lab can help us out, we greatly, greatly appreciate it. It's
Yes.
been a very interesting study. So, yeah. But it is a law, a state law, that it goes on our reportable diseases. And it is the one of the positives that do need to be sent to NPHL. So just as a reminder, please do. And I can help you out with the shipping part if needed. So, all right.
Allison, I have a question about rotavirus, kind of talking about onboarding these assays. So several health departments have reported an increase in rotavirus labs that they've gotten. And many of them are on a GI panel. And we don't investigate like individual rotavirus cases. We only, if we identify a cluster or an outbreak, we'll investigate that and then, give infection control recommendations as needed. And we have identified 2 outbreaks in long-term care facilities and 1 probable outbreak in a long-term care facility. And I'm just wondering if in the past, we just haven't had a handle kind of on our baseline numbers of rotavirus, and with the onboarding of some of these molecular tests and, more labs are just doing them and they're just picking them up now and we're seeing it.
Quite possible. Yeah.
I would agree with that, Allison. I do think, though, that we do have more cases showing up. We've seen a lot more norovirus too at the present time. But a lot of labs used to do the antigen tests, and they kind of dropped those now to the molecular tests. So I'm assuming some of that is due to the fact that the PCR test is being used. It's interesting. We never used to correlate rotavirus with adult infections. And I think if you look at the ages of the people that are getting rotavirus, I think a majority of them are adults now or older people. So it's that's changed the scenario a little bit on my mind. I used to think rotavirus as a childhood infection.
Right.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. No.
And it'd also be interesting why that has happened.
Well, again, it might be due to the fact that we never look for it in adults.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Possibly. So.
My question is, Joe from Syracuse, on those panels, and we have a platform that can run the panels. It's just, what's the reimbursement then on that? I mean, and I've heard some tremors that they're talking about allowing us to bill for the 5 targets or less and go ahead and do the full profile, because they know we're kind of locked into that. I'd be okay with that, but it's just, they're outpatient wise, like in the nursing home, they're very ticky tacky. I mean, they run 5 and they're magical. You run over 5 and it becomes experimental. You know what I mean? You're like, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Gerald, is that a situation with all insurance companies, just certain insurance companies? Or are you talking CMS?
It starts with Medicare. I mean, if you're like immunocompromised or inpatient, which inpatient, all you do is a shell game because it's basically a DRG, but otherwise they tend to not like the multiplex. So that's respiratory or stool. It doesn't really matter.
I know it's so expensive, but it's such a great tool because of its turnaround time.
Well, I don't mind doing them. I just don't want to be paid nothing on them. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Oh,
Right.
I mean, it's like, it's a great tool, but we're not talking $50 or $45. We're talking about $120 a cartridge when you're talking
Oh.
the big panels.
right. Right. Exactly.
I mean, COVID itself, just with molecular, doubled my just my expenses this year. I mean, I spent an extra $200,000 just because of COVID. I can't imagine what UNMC paid. I'm sure it's
Wow.
tens of
Yeah.
millions.
Wow.
Yeah, Gerald, it would seem that if we could come up with a way to use the multiplex panels, maybe in a little different way to help define outbreaks. In other words, if a nursing home has a positive rotavirus, then we got 3 or 4 other people there and we want to know, do they have rotavirus? Then set up rotavirus testing only for the rest of those people. But that's not the way it works. They want to do multiplex on all of them. So I don't know. I don't know how to get that answer out there, but I think these multiplexes are great for the EPIs to figure out what's started the outbreaks.
No, I mean, we would love to do them too. I mean, we do the
Yeah.
antigen for the crypto or whatever, but stool culture, I mean, insurance companies don't mind them, but 5 days on a stool culture. I mean, who wants to diagnose salmonella and shigella when on a multiplex it's 2 hours?
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, 2 days,
Right.
2 hours, 5 days, that's a big difference in turnaround time.
It is. It is. Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well,
Yeah.
at least for something like norovirus, we can do a single plex norovirus PCR that's just as quick as the multiplex. So we can do that. But those aren't cheap either, those cartridges. Just telling you. It's changed the way we think in the lab anyway when it comes to these types of tests.
I just wish they would capitate versus just say it's not going to be covered. Because force the
Right.
lab into be more efficient, but just to say no coverage,
Right.
that's a tough one to swallow. When they're like, well, it's experimental. Well, no,
Yeah.
it's not.
Yeah, let's do nothing, right?
All right. Any other questions about GI outbreaks from the state?
I see, Karen, that Christy put a comment in there that
Thank you. I'm not keeping up with
has
them.
seen a lot of rota.
Yes, she says that she has not seen this much rota.
It seems like a lot. It does seem like a
Right.
lot.
Right. And as Emily has said, that these are the same issues for the respiratory panel as well. So Derry Stover from DHHS does share with us that for animal exposure in crypto, we found occupational animal exposure was identified in 93 of over 1,000, which is 8% or almost 9% of cryptosporidiosis cases in Nebraska. And that was in persons ages greater than 14 years old from 2005 to 2015. So that's an interesting CDC article that he has shared in the chat if anybody's interested.
I'd be curious, Derry, for the testing that we do, we're able to put species on the cryptos. And we've seen a fair amount of crypto felis coming across. I wonder how many of those are associated with cat exposures.
Wow. Domestic cat for sure. Yeah, there's the article. So we'll have to do some research on that to see what they say. Thank you, Derry, for sharing that information. That'll be really, really good to know. So, okay, oops, I just lost my agenda here. If no other questions or comments, I'll go on to arbovirus. I know this is the season to kick it off. Jeff, I thought we had him on.
Yep, I'm here, Karen.
Excellent.
Yeah, well, it's not just arbovirus. It's I'll call it vector-borne season. Right now, it's tick season. I know right now it's been a little chilly for spring can't decide if it wants to be here or not. But ticks are out and active right now. We started tick collections last week, and we're collecting them, so they're certainly active. So it's tick-borne season right now. And then we're planning on putting out here, hopefully here in the next week or so, start getting out our health alerts out to providers and labs regarding tick-borne disease testing and diagnostics and treatment like we do every year. So I'm just working on finalizing those. So folks, just be on the lookout for those here coming out. Hopefully, like I said, either next week or the week after is what we're hoping to get out, just to make sure it's on everybody's radar. And then once we get closer to June and stuff, we'll start transitioning to mosquito season and the West Nile season. And we'll again, we're planning on doing what we've done in past years, where providers will be able to submit CSF and serum on suspected neuroinvasive West Nile cases for testing to MPHL. And this year, correct me if I'm wrong, folks there at MPHL, we're sending those out to ARUP now. Is that correct?
Jeff, that's correct.
Okay.
But we do have a mechanism to get back the positive samples.
Okay, I was just going to ask if we had that built in, because it's
We
nice to be
do.
able to send those off to CDC to have those confirmed by PRNT
We do.
on our
Yeah.
side. So great. Well, that's great. Great to hear, Pete. And we'll send out a HON with that too, just letting providers and then the labs know that will be an option again this year. We'll probably send it out in May, and then it'll start June through October. And so that's the kind of the big stuff right now for vector-borne. We're just kind of starting out here, so not a lot of news out there or anything big at this juncture. So just everyone kind of be on the lookout for those health alerts regarding diagnostic testing, etc. So that's all.
Jeff, it's turkey hunting season, so I know that they're picking up the ticks.
Yeah, running into those to the Lone
Yeah.
Star nymphs and stuff is
Yeah.
what everyone's running into. So, yep.
I've got relatives that do turkey hunting, and they've been coming with some nymphs. So
Yep. The Lone Stars are definitely out and about too. The nymphs, especially adults, will probably peak here in May and June, and nymphs will peak shortly before that. So, yep, they're out and about. So,
yeah.
Okay, for any of you turkey hunters out there, beware.
Don't sit
Yes.
in the grass waiting for your turkey, right?
Yes, fight the bite and put on, wear some permethrin treated clothes. That'll help keep a lot of ticks off.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. All right, thank you for that information. Do we have anything on leads? I know that Gary's shared before the updates, but I don't believe there's been any changes to what he's said before, other than some of the changes to the reference levels. Does anybody have questions about leads across the state that you would like to ask right now?
I do want to mention that we have updated our medical management recommendations, and it is posted on the website.
It is. Sandra, that is a great message. Thank you for stepping in here. And tell me, on the website, is it front page, or do we just need to go down to LEDs?
If you go to the lead page, there should be a information for providers link you should click, and it should be all on that page.
Okay, excellent. And any thoughts to putting that in an alert too yet?
Yes, we are. The alert is drafted. We're just working on the finalization before we send that out, so that should be relatively soon.
Okay, all right. We'll be watching that, and that will be really awesome. And we'll try to also make sure that all the laboratorians receive that as well.
Okay.
So thanks. Thank you so much. Any other questions? If not, we will move on. I should give it a minute there to see if we have any other questions. How about for our antibiotic resistance program? Do we have anybody to speak to that? Don't think Ishrat is in today. Does anybody have questions, however, from the state that we could forward to them? If you do, certainly put those in the chat. If not, we could move on.
Aaron, we'd like to make sure and get any Acinetobacter highly drug resistant isolates sent to the public health lab. We're looking at those from a national standpoint, doing some sequencing. Okay.
Right. Good to know. Any other comments? All right. Thank you, Pete. Any comments or questions on TB?
I'll jump in. I have a couple of updates. Our annual report will be out very soon. The state is changing how they're reporting out cases by health department. They will only now report if there's cases greater than 5. So that is a change for those of you that do your annual risk assessment per CDC recommendations. Also, we can do moxifloxacin drug susceptibility testing. We had discussed this with the new study 31, the 4-month TB treatment that came out earlier this year. So that is an option that we can use through our public health lab if the need would arise. And we actually have had the situation come up already where we have requested the moxifloxacin drug susceptibility testing. Sometimes it's used also for if there's like a first line drug resistance, like with INH or rifampin, a lot of times I'll add moxifloxacin. And of course, we want to make sure that the TB strain is susceptible to moxifloxacin if it is being used in the drug regimen. That's all I have.
How are the cases, Kristen, right now?
Cases have been busy. We're sitting at 10 cases for the year. So we're up on cases. So last year we ended the year with 22. Right now we're sitting at 10 cases. Things have been busy. We have numerous contact investigations going on throughout the state. There's definitely TB. It's sort of hard to remember we had TB before COVID. We have TB during COVID. And now since there's sort of a break, we still have TB issues. So still definitely issues with TB.
Are we still seeing the majority of these as imported cases?
I suspect most of them is imported cases, but it's hard to identify. Okay. We definitely have US born cases for the year reported already. So mixture. We also have Afghans arriving. So across the state, we may have more TB testing going on, especially if we have Afghans coming from bases where we're often repeating testing to make sure people are being treated and tested appropriately. So I think we'll have better information moving forward, but initially it was very quick. And I know we have Afghans resettling all over the state. So definitely an issue to consider if you're not familiar with IGRAs or how they work. Probably would be a smart choice with an Afghan refugee coming due to the BCG vaccination. Most of them have more than likely received to get a good result for treatment.
Okay. Thanks, Kristen.
Kristen, thank you. Thank you very much. So with that, Pete, I wonder if moxifloxacin should be a orderable test on NPHL. Or is it included with our current testing?
Karen, I think that's still being looked at. We're at the mercy of what the CDC labs will test for first line testing. Okay. And Kristen, I believe at this moment we have to request moxifloxacin. Is that correct?
Yeah, I believe we're doing the second line drug testing. It's not MDDR testing or the molecular, it's the second line testing. So that's what we're putting in for our current need right now. So
we'll look at the reporting and stuff, Karen, as time goes on here, because it's pretty new at the moment, but we have the capacity to get it done, the testing. Yeah.
And I've been seeing more moxifloxacin ordered. So I think it is something we will be more familiar with, especially as adding to drug cocktails, especially when we have more complex or suspected drug resistant cases. So we'll just sort of have to wait and see, but I do foresee having this need moving forward in a greater capacity.
Okay. So Karen, we'll have to look at our reporting order or resulting to see how we can add these new drugs and if it should be part of routine. I guess
Yep.
we'll look at it.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. We'll move on. If there are no other questions about outbreaks. I think there's been some discussion here about ticks. I know that Zoanne and Jeff have had some good discussion. So feel free to look at your chat to follow that up. Meanwhile, I'm going to go on to the chem and rad terrorism. Last month, we gave a small presentation of how Nebraska would be involved in a chemical or radiological, and I hate to say terrorism because really it could just be an event, accidental versus covert or overt. So I have dedicated my time for May 2nd that I'd like to contact the laboratories that do have our chemical supplies, and I will be contacting you this afternoon to see if we can discuss more on the date of May 2nd, how that program will continue, and if you want to continue, and we can go from there. So if you have the big boxes or once had them and don't have them anymore, that's no problem. We'll figure that all out. And some of you may even still have all the supplies that we had asked that you kept as a bubble, and that would be specimen draw supplies, and that might include vacutainers, which do expire. So we'd like to discuss how worthy it is to continue to do that. All right, I want to know if anybody from RPS is on. I think I did see you, Tony. Anybody else?
This is Tony Goldenstein. I really don't have anything for the group. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I bet RPS is out, the rest of them, simply because of Monday the way it goes. So, all right. Any questions for RPS, though, that we can forward? Has anybody out there had any issues with, let's say, New Alert or turnaround time for the tests that, or the specimens you have sent to us to order? All right. I want to share with you, while you're thinking about it, certainly break in if you do have any questions, but I want to cover a little bit about continued ordering of supplies for Category B. Most of our specimens do get sent that way. So here, if I can get back on, are you now seeing my NPHL website? Can anybody confirm that that's what you're seeing now? Okay, thank you, Pete. And if you ever need boxes to send specimens in or need collection supplies, what you can do is in our website, you would go to supply orders, and then that brings you to this particular site. In reality, I think what it does is you do have to put in your account number. Now, I don't have an account number, but if you have one like a PDA or PDF number, certainly put that number in. And then what you'll see is kind of a new system. I think they've updated it here not too long ago, that you can review each of the products. If you need biohazard bags to send in, if you need boxes. Now, There are a couple things that are labeled category B styrofoams, but they are not properly labeled on the outside. So what I would prefer you to do is go to the very end and do FedEx boxes. If you're shipping FedEx or ground couriers, and you can certainly order how many of those boxes you need. We have small boxes and medium boxes. I think that the mediums, anything over 5 to 20 specimens need to be shipped by the medium boxes. Obviously, if you have an outbreak, you will want to give us a call. We can forward any large system packages to you that would send more specimens than 20, 25. So please let us know, and we can help you with that part. All right. So any questions on shipping? Okay. And with that, let me try to bring back my, there we go. If you can see my agenda, we're going to go on then. I don't have a safety tip for this month. Do anybody out there in the field have biosafety questions, however? All right. Hearing none, I'll go on. Are there any other open topics that you'd like to share? Watching for anything on the chat. If not, I do want to let everybody know I do have saved the date for June 15th and June 22nd for packaging and shipping. That's for new shippers only. If you just need recertification, please contact me. I'll share that website for you. It's a CDC. It is a CDC site that you can get on. But if you do need shipping for the first time, I do recommend this class. And we do divide it up because it's just too much of an 8-hour day to try to do by Zoom. I do liken it to our past APHL classes. The curriculum is provided by APHL and CDC. So I think it's a very good class, and we are going to try to handle it on a quarterly basis so we can really catch you up on packaging and shipping. So I see a couple of you mentioned that you are interested. I will forward that information out to you. So one more chance to ask any questions or open mic. Or any comments, please. I definitely will send the shipping class info out. If you haven't yet signed in or just was late, no problem. Please do sign your name into the chat box. I'll leave it up for a couple minutes. If you have any last minute questions or just want to ask personally, I'll hang in there for another couple minutes. And
hey, Karen, I have a quick question.
Yes, Justin.
Hi, what's the percent of BA2s that we're seeing? I see it's going up, but statewide, I know in Douglas County, it was a little bit slow. Looks like we've made kind of that transition, but just curious. Do we know?
Let me pull that data real quick to
Go
get
ahead,
you
Emily.
the exact percentage. I'm pulling up my email right now. I do know that we go off of what Dr. Donahue puts out, and that comes out usually on Wednesdays. And I want to say it was 57%. We are over half right now statewide, and he will be putting out a new set of information coming up.
Okay, perfect. It's interesting that we're not seeing the increases like we're seeing in other parts of the country, even though we're now over half of our COVIDs, our sequencing is BA2s. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Yes. Thanks for asking, Justin. Any other questions? If not, our next meeting is Monday, May 16th. I'll try to get that save the date out a little sooner. So I definitely appreciate everybody on today. Hope you have a good week and stay safe. I'll stay on for a few minutes if you have questions.
All right, thanks, Karen.
Bye-bye now, everyone.